On November 10, 1998, Bert Carson, Vietnam War veteran, and Christina Carson, Vietnam protester, were invited to speak at the annual Veterans Day program, Geraldine, Alabama. The news media found the unusual story of interest and asked the couple for an interview. Reaction to the news clips that follow prompted them to tell their whole story in the book they've written.
Well, what's your spouse like? Do you share common hobbies and interests? Maybe you're complete opposites. Well, in DeKalb County, in the town of Mentone, there's one mixed-matched couple. He's a Vietnam vet, and she moved to Canada to protest the war. 48 News Sand Mountain Bureau Chief Chris Haddox joins us now from the newsroom with more on this all-new story at 6. And Chris, they used to have opposite views, but now it seems they've done a bit of compromising.
Yeah, Kimberly, you would think it would be an argument waiting to happen, but when they finally did meet, they realized they have a lot in common. Bert and Christina Carson are an unlikely pair brought together by an unpopular war. In 1968, Bert was an Army sergeant finishing up 16 months in Vietnam.
It's very, very vivid. From the very first night arriving there and realizing this was really for real.
Christina was a 21-year-old Vietnam protester who moved to Canada from Pennsylvania's Amish country.
And I've lived in Canada for the last 30 years until, interestingly, as things come full circle, a Vietnam veteran invited me to marry him.
The two first met 25 years after Christina moved to Canada. Bert was giving a motivational speech, and they realized they had two things in common. Neither of them liked the Vietnam War, but both respected the uniform and the people who wore it.
When I did come back, I got to meet a lot of Vietnam veterans. And it helped me understand some things that I wasn't able to understand for a lot of years.
Like many Vietnam veterans, when Bert Carson got back to the United States, he didn't talk about his experiences in Vietnam. Instead, he bottled up his emotions, and it took 23 years and another war to bring them to the surface. Desert Storm jarred loose his emotions, and it prompted him to pay tribute to Vietnam veterans, so he put an ad in the paper.
And I said, I served in Vietnam, and if you served in Vietnam and would like to talk about it, why don't we get together?
27 veterans answered the ad. The Vietnam Southern Command was formed, and 2 years later, a monument was erected in Fort Payne.
It's meant a lot to a lot of people.
And I'd like more people in this country to understand that story, and then make a space for these men, many of whom have never, ever heard the words thank you or welcome home.
And saying thank you is what Veterans Day is all about, and it's something veterans really appreciate. Live in the newsroom, Chris Haddox, WFF 48 News.
Well, it seems like they've certainly found some common ground. Beautiful story, Chris. Thanks.
Story could make a movie.
It could be the basis for a movie.
Veterans Day, we always hear stories of battlefield bravery, but very seldom do you hear a love story. 31's Laura Howe met a DeKalb County couple brought together by their very different Vietnam experiences. Laura?
Well, the story of Bert and Christina Carson is literally one of war and peace. That's because Bert is a Vietnam vet, and ironically, his wife, Christina, was a 60s war protester.
Together, Bert and Christina Carson are coping with different but painful Vietnam memories. For years, Bert struggled with the horror of war and his return home to a hostile America.
We came home over a period of 10 years, and for the most part, we came home alone to cope on our own. We never had parades. We lost the war.
Christina's family disowned her because of her anti-war beliefs. She cut all ties in the States and lived in Canada for more than 20 years.
This was the United States' second Civil War, as far as I was concerned. It was an emotional civil war, and it put a rend in this country that's never been healed.
The Carsons met by chance at a dinner 7 years ago, and now they tell their story to veterans and school groups, promoting understanding and open-mindedness. And they found that walking in each other's shoes has led down a path to healing.
I've never talked to a Vietnam vet who didn't feel that we should not have been involved in Vietnam. And here I am talking to a war protester who felt the same way. The only difference is Christina left her home in the United States and went to Canada, and I went to Vietnam to find out we shouldn't be there.
And Christina says that she still believes the government should have never gotten involved in Vietnam, but she says that she has rethought her sentiment towards those who fought that war. She says that Bert has given her a brand new appreciation of what the vets went through before and after the war, and she says she now has great respect for those who fought in Vietnam.
What an unusual and wonderful love story.
Isn't it, though?
Thank you, Laura.